Deeply Disturbing Things.
The podcast.
I'm Macy.
And I'm Naomi.
And we're two anxious counselors who like to talk about deeply disturbing things.
And yeah, buckle up. Let's get into it.
It's hot outside.
It's so hot. And we have to be sans air conditioner today because though our mic doesn't pick up the air conditioner, my phone, which I'm using to film for our teaser bits, does pick it up.
Teaser bits.
So we're suffering for you.
Yes.
We're suffering for the big tease.
Strip out of my sweater.
I know. Why are you wearing a sweater and black jeans? It's almost 100 degrees.
It's all a mistake. It's honestly a lot of my clothes because I leave on Tuesday at like 5 a.m. So a lot of my clothes have been packed for my trip. So,
the good clothes are packed.
Yes, I'm down to the bare minimals.
The seasonally appropriate clothes are packed. Because that looks like full on winter
wear.
attire.
Yeah. It's like good November wear.
Yeah, throw some boots on. You're right in there.
Yeah.
Little scarf.
Yeah.
Little knitted hat.
Yes.
I went hiking today and we stumbled across some huckleberries.
You're lucky you didn't get eaten by a bar.
I know.
I'm gonna eat one.
Yeah, they're real good. No, that's not a fucking huckleberry. That's a blackberry.
I know that, but I like blackberry.
Oh, okay.
You look so good.
Well, we packed a snack that was basically bear bait. We packed blackberries and fish to eat.
What? And you should have it in an airtight container anyway. So...
No, I had fish all over my fingers, blackberry juice just running down my face. And then we went to their little
super good
snack zone, the Huckleberry Patch.
You're lucky you didn't get your face mauled off.
I know.
Because those are delicious.
Aren't they good?
Mm-hmm. Very good.
And there's a whole bunch that aren't ripe yet. So I think we'll go back in like a week and get some more, but be more prepared.
Yeah.
Because that's why they're in with the blackberries. That was the only container we had. I want to go full on with like the hands-free double-handed picking. I want like a container around my...
Why did you take fish with you?
Because I
why is that the snack of hiking? It's not.
You know what I really like though is I like going to Trader Joe's, getting the mini pita pockets, getting some fish, getting something.
When you say fish, I need like what kind of fish?
It could be a salmon. Today we had the rainbow trout.
Okay.
Like a smoked. And then you get something to put in there with it. Today we went with the spicy hummus, and then it makes a nice little fish pocket.
That's exactly what the bear thinks. He's
I know.
Like shoving you with huckleberries and your insides, a nice little person pocket.
Exactly. I'm making it easier for him. Aren't these good?
They were delicious.
Help yourself. They're for us.
Okay.
Huckleberry picking is so like, it's not like other fruits where you can just grab a handful. It's so like pick one here, pick one here. You really have to savor each berry.
I saw a thing that bears eat around like 240 plus berries a day.
I was asking Paul, like, how do they get them? It's such a delicate process.
They kind of long tongues and they long.
That's what you're saying. They just go. They like lap it up.
You know how like horse lips have like the go like that. Bear lips can do the same thing.
I need that.
Bear lips. I go first today.
Okay, we have ciders today on board.
Yes.
The highest alcohol content we could find at the store, 8%.
It is true. Don't look at my computer.
Oh.
I saw you do it. Okay. So this was a rabbit trail. This is how this happened. I told you earlier I was watching Alone on Netflix where sorry, you had a fly that came at me.
It's probably a black fly I brought from the forest. They were all over.
Covered in black flies.
It's been probably been stuck in my hair since the woods earlier.
You did take your hat off.
I did. It probably just flew out. Watch out.
So they like drop these participants in the middle of the wilds and they have to survive. Whoever survives the longest basically gets $500,000, which is pretty significant.
How do you think you'd do in that situation?
Not great. These are like survivalist people too. And there's people dropping out like 3 days in because they didn't like put all their energy into shelter and then had no food for 3 days. And 12 days There was like emotional breakdowns happening, 24 days, like just like true starvation happening. It's like weird though that that's the entertainment level. It's
That's where you're going these days.
literally watching people starve themselves
What does
to
that
death for
mean?
$500,000.
We should analyze that.
That's not really my topic. But anyway, so I was watching that though, and this is that like synchronicity thing, like everything's connected. So I was really fascinated that like half the people who got off of the show, or who like chose to leave early, it was emotional. Randomly crying, family, like I miss my family.
See, that's where I would excel. Like, I don't have the skills to like make a fire or like a good weather resistant shelter or like catch any food, but I have a strong fucking will to survive, and I love being alone. So that's where I would do well,
it's
until I
interesting.
starve to death.
It is interesting though, because like everyone says that initially, like they'll be fine, and it's temporary. You know that it will end, and you know you could leave if you wanted to, which I think is part of the problem versus like if you know you can't get out of it.
But how long are they there?
It's in whoever stays the longest. So
like, what is the longest?
the farthest I'm at right now, episode wise, is like winter has hit and they're at 24 days.
That's
there.
it?
Mm-hmm.
I could
They're
definitely
29,
be alone for 24 days.
But survival, starving, bears.
No, that's
you,
where
like,
I would last as long as I could until the food ran out.
Most of them, the bears started like in the first couple of days of just like being uncomfortably.
I also don't really like being cold.
That
So
is a problem.
I would prefer a summer drop.
They're like right next to this lake that's really windy too. Like, anyway, it's not about that. That's not what we're talking about. But so this emotional thing came up, and then I saw this random article online that connected something for me. So have you heard of Prairie Madness?
No, what is Prairie Madness?
Okay, I'm going to tell you, or Prairie Fever, but we'll
I've
call it Prairie
heard of
Madness.
none of the prairie.
Okay, so this is an affliction, not an actual or like disease or something like that.
It's not in the DSM-5.
No,
TR.
No. It affected European settlers in the Great Plains during the migration and settlement of like the Canadian prairies, Western United States during the 19th century. So that's
interesting.
Settlers moved from really urbanized areas on the east and would face mental breakdown caused by living in harsh conditions under extreme levels of isolation on the prairie. And this was like a thing that was called Prairie Madness, and included depression, withdrawal, changes in character and habit, and even violence.
This is what I experienced when I moved from California up to this area in the early 90s. I experienced that exact thing. I was depressed for 2 years straight. I was like, what the fuck is this place?
Yeah. No, I think I had that. Like, there's one point when I moved to a more isolated area and I was having panic attacks. I lived in Medical Lake for a short period of time, and that was really isolating and depressing in general.
Yeah, I don't do good with too much away from city. I mean, look where I live. Like, we can stumble and hit downtown from here.
So think about this a little bit, because it's okay. Like, there's that level, like where I think most people have experienced something like that. But why is this a unique thing that happened? Because it actually went away mostly like through the 20th century. So I do want to show you.
Does it have something to do with wagons?
Here's a picture of like the prairie land. He's in front of.
Is that a crop circle?
I have no idea what he's in front
Looks
of.
like a fucking crop circle.
It does. It really does.
Maybe that's what the Prairie Madness was.
Maybe. There's actually been quite a few like old movies about Prairie Madness. Like, I haven't watched them because they don't look great. but it's there. Here's a picture of, a family living on the prairie back in the days. I've seen some other where it's like hut size, and surrounded by literally effing nothing.
I mean, is part of it just.
I know you're right into problem solving mode.
I mean,
I'm just want to learn more first.
I mean, I know it's a hard life, but could some of it?
Can I tell you more?
Be that, like, were they aware that they're on native land? That wasn't their land.
That wasn't brought up, but maybe it's a factor.
It seems like
No. Okay, stop
maybe
looking
they
at my
don't.
laptop.
No, I'm looking at that picture.
I know you can't.
I'm just
stop.
now I feel like
drawn to it.
Crop circles are a part of the story, so I'm like all in.
I don't even
That was a fucking crop
it was
circle.
time period, correct? That's all I can say. Okay, so
why are we not talking about it?
We're gonna completely avoid it like we normally do. It's not a clinical condition, but it's been in many writings of both nonfiction and fiction where this Prairie Madness comes up. It was described by E.V. Smalley in 1893. He stated, an alarming amount of insanity occurs in the new prairie states among farmers and their wives. So it's like, I had never heard of this before. It's like this wave of quote unquote insanity throughout the prairies.
No, I never heard of this either.
Okay, so there's an old article that is that 1893 date.
Acknowledgedly, it was a tough life.
Yeah. So I'm going to read to you from 1893.
Acknowledgedly, is that a word?
I don't, but it's close enough. An article that talked about.
I'm eating all the huckleberries. They need to be removed from my reach.
I can't eat them while I'm talking.
I know, but I'm afraid I will eat them all while you're talking. And then when I talk, you will have none.
I'll have no snacks. Can't you just close the top? Will you not respect the top?
I do not have that kind of willpower when it comes to huckleberries.
Okay, so you would die pretty fast because part of what they had to do is ration the food they did get and not just eat it all at once. Day 3. Okay, so the title of this one under that one photo I showed you is the hardships the women endured in those prairie homes were many and often exasperating and seemingly hopeless. Prairie madness among women was a form of insanity that ended in a macabre form of suicide.
Oh,
I know. I was like, wait,
wow.
What? One of the prevalent means of self-destruction that these women did was to set fire to their hair and clothes and run down the road or across the prairie. Another form was to undress, run wild, carving the body with a knife until the woman bled to death. Usual forms, again, real fast. I know. And again, this is an article from 1893. Such usual forms of suicide as hanging and poisoning or shooting oneself was never used in these instances.
It's so much more like
it's
like in tune with the prairie.
Exhibitionism is
and
the way that they titled
the
it.
Prairie.
It's like it's a expression almost. It's visual.
It's a big statement.
It's impactful. So according to this article, it said it seemed to be part of this mental breakdown. It was estimated that over 10% of women going to the prairie country to live in sod houses suffered from this mental madness. Even the horses seemed to be affected, many of them acting crazy and becoming sick. By the time the homesteaders and their wagons got well into Kansas and were enveloped in the endless prairie, much of the excitement of the original trip had worn off, and in most cases, the curse of all wagon trains, dysentery, had hit them. And with this sickness came the strange, forbidding fear of the prairie. So here's once I got to this point, I had this ominous, the prairie is ominous.
Like now. It has a life of its own.
Yes. So
God, can you imagine just shitting yourself on
constantly
the prairie?
On the prairie. You can't hide behind anything. Everyone's going to see your shame.
Everybody's going to see it. I need to live within walking distance of a hospital.
Me too.
And I do.
I didn't, and you had to drive me all around to hospitals. When they came to this land that was supposed to be their home, they were given plots of land through part of the United States. Here you get a set amount of acres, but no support. You're out in the middle of nowhere, sort of thing. So they're excited, and then they show up to this place that's going to be their home, and that elation goes away.
It's a big disappointment, maybe, from what they were envisioning.
So there's a letter from, again, this is old Miss Newcomb, describing her feelings when she and her husband got to the land assigned to them in southern Kansas. Flora Newcomb and Jim Newcomb, her husband, were a young married couple who had gone west to find their own land and establish a new home. She said, "It's hard to describe my feelings of disappointment when I saw the land that was to be our home." Miss Newcomb wrote in a letter to her sister, I had dreamed of a beautiful stream with a tall oak tree and beautiful bottom land stretching out with other groves of trees.
And it's a big dry square.
Well, we have a stream, all right, but it isn't beautiful. The water's so muddy and slimy. When you take a bucket of it, half of the bucket is filled with stinking silt. Sure, there are trees, a few small, sickly looking cottonwood saplings. There's nothing to build the log cabin I dreamed about. Stretching in every direction is the prairie. Again, that ominous. I can't describe the feeling. I can't describe the feeling. Look at this vast expanse without a tree, without anything to break it. Then there is the wind. It never stops. I don't see how I could go into any town because my skirts are often above my head and there's no way to keep them down. Why am I talking about even going into town? The nearest town and its only settlement is Wichita, and that's 30 miles from here. God, but wouldn't I give anything to be back in Ohio? Here's an article or a picture from, it was hell on horses and women. Here's the picture of like this woman with this wheelbarrow full of
that?
I don't ground, hard, flat, dry ground. It's not even like dirt.
Is that what that is? Or is it rocks?
Or it could be rocks. It could be rocks.
It looks real heavy either way.
Yes.
And she looks hot as hell in that dress.
She looks like I made a mistake is what her face says.
Well, I think, the government really needed people to homestead these areas. And so they probably sold it as like you have the babbling brook and the beautiful oak tree and green grasses. And then you get out there and it's like, oh,
I literally have nothing to build anything
there's
with.
No shade. There's no clear water.
This is where you start seeing my connections with Alone, just being dropped in the middle of fucking nowhere and you just have to figure it out. But they don't get $500,000 at the end and they don't have an escape button. They're just there. Okay, so
I need an escape button. Is that a thing?
The easy button. Prairie Madness was caused by the isolation and tough living conditions on the prairie. The level of isolation depended on the topography and geography of the region. Most examples were reported in the Great Plains region of the U.S. One explanation for the high levels of isolation was that Homestead Act of 1862. This act stipulated that a person would be given 160 acres if they were able to live on it and make something out of it within 5 years. So they're like super like on a timeline too.
Right.
The farms,
build a house. You need to bust out some kidlets.
The farms were half a mile apart, but usually much more than that. And not everyone got there at the same time. It was a little settlement and community, but mostly very self-sufficient.
I wonder if there was shady shit. Like if you got there before your neighbor and theirs was better, you just like start building on theirs and be like, sorry when they show up. Over. Yeah. I mean, I'd fucking do that probably.
Just realized how much sweat was coming down my forehead.
No, it's hot in here. We have to suffer for the teaser bits.
I'm suffering. Okay.
You are suffering.
My hot pants. I do have an under tank top.
Are you gonna get Prairie Madness?
Do you mind me stripping?
I don't mind.
Okay, it's happening. Sorry. Okay.
Do it.
Oh gosh. Headset. Things are getting real. All right. Remind me to get my shirt off my microphone cable later. Okay, here we go. I'm not even that far into my topic. I'm stripping down. All right. Okay. So a lot of these families came from the East Coast.
Okay.
Where they had more connection with people. Like there was towns. It was a thing. There was people. So a lot of them came from a very different area and then all of a sudden nothing. Think true isolation here.
So it's very survival, right? It's very like we need a purpose. I mean, it kind of explains why it became the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
Because you need some source of strength to get you through. And
absolutely.
And you're not in those urban areas where there's different culture. You have to create your own culture. And God damn it.
Yeah.
You are gonna work hard and you are gonna till that land.
And I've earned this freedom to do whatever the fuck I want. And after reading this, I'm like, okay, fair.
It makes a lot of sense.
So also a big thing was like medical care out there. Like you said, there were no hospitals, there were no doctors. So
terrifying.
It took a very long time for farms to get big enough and communities to get big enough. So most of the time when children got sick, they died. A lot of trauma for parents happened, and that was believed to impact the Prairie Madness. So you'd have a lot of parents who had, remember the infant tombstones we found? A lot of scenarios like that. And I read a different article where I was talking about women during this time, like men weren't necessarily as involved during this time period. It was really the woman's plight to deal with. If the man went into town, that could be days of being gone, and she could be pregnant and having a baby on the dirt floor of her home in the middle of nowhere with no help.
That's why you got to bust out a bunch of kids, because you need a team.
It was quantity then, not quality.
You need a team. Assemble a team.
Yes, that way when 75% of them died, you at least had some.
And hopefully get a bunch of girls in there that can help with like the girl stuff. Get a bunch of guys in there that help with the guy stuff, because things were very gendered back then.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, you know, you have your team.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was fascinated by. Again, I have this old, this is admitting something. I have an old book that says Western on the front. And I think I took it in elementary school from the school library and never returned it. It's like
you stole something, Macy.
I probably put it in my bag and never returned it. I've checked out a lot of books in my time. I bet I had a book report or something. It had like one of those squishy like leather front. It was a fancy book that talked about the Western times, and I pulled it out and I was like reading about the prairie stuff, and it was.
You still have it?
Yes.
That is stolen property. I hope the library police come after you right after this goes live.
They will. I won't tell them which school it was from or what town though. Okay, so another major cause was the harsh weather in the plains. So they had very long, cold winters filled with blizzards, followed by short, hot summers. Once winter came, it seemed like all life, plants, animals disappear from the plains. Farmers would be stuck in their houses under snow for days at a time before they can even get out. So they're cramped. Few trees, so like no blocking of wind. The flat land of the prairie created this big just stretches of miles and miles and miles of openness, and many settlers and writings talk about the wind, as the other article said, that rushed through the prairie. It was loud, forceful, and they said alien compared to what settlers had experienced.
See?
They used the word alien. Many stayed very attached to their ways of life back east, so they would try to like adapt their life there, which doesn't work. So they felt that could contribute. It was interesting to hear. So would you say that it's a pretty, I don't know, it's weird to say this, but I think it's true that women plant flowers, that's like a gendered norm thing that people would assume nowadays?
I mean, I would say in general, yeah, probably.
So it feels weird saying it in
like
this day
flowers,
and age,
I think in general are more like a feminine thing, like as far as a print or whatever.
Yeah. So apparently that was a huge thing that the prairie women would do. So prairie flower, tons of wildflowers everywhere there, right? So one of the things that they would try to do is create like, I want this sorts of colors here, like some control over the environment. So they would do a lot of planting flowers. And I think that makes sense. Yeah. And I feel like that's carried through culturally as women planting flowers is kind of like their thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Okay. So, all right. Immigrant families were also more at risk for Prairie Madness, apparently. Again, like there aren't real stats around this. This is just like qualitative data over history. So immigrant families, though, like if you think of the isolation everyone else dealt with, they also had language barriers, custom barriers. So there were more reports of families having this who were an immigrant family.
Like from Ireland?
Yeah, from anywhere, yeah. But yeah, that would have been prominent at the time. Immigrant families were also hard hit because they came from coming from communities in Europe where they had very close-knit small villages.
I mean, Irish speak English. I don't know why I said that.
I don't
I was just thinking of the times, like what was a big immigrant
Mhm,
group?
mhm.
Oh, probably Italian maybe at that
Yeah,
time
yeah.
too, which would
So
be a non-English.
small knit communities that are very used to relying on each other. All of a sudden, that's a huge culture shock. So there is a lot of debate about this affecting women more than men. A lot of it has to do with culturally women being more isolated at the time.
Get to your red tent and you stay there.
But it's interesting because the cases that were reported for women, it tended to be more social withdrawal and suicide, the big flashy displays of suicide, and men were violence.
Interesting.
Okay, so symptoms. Again, this isn't like an actual thing, it's probably a combination of things, but it was similar to depression. The women affected by Prairie Madness were said to show symptoms of crying. This confused me. Maybe you can help me here. Slovenly dress.
Oh, it's very judgy. It's
that
like they're
another
not
judgy
really
word?
like caring about their appearance.
When you live in the
From
prairie
it-
and there's nobody there,
And
like,
do you have a washing machine?
okay, it sounded
Is there a
judgy to me.
dry cleaner on the corner? I mean, what does good prairie dressing look like? I want to know the work that entails to not be slovenly. I mean, maybe they like
Slovenly.
don't do their hair, and they probably had a lot of updos.
But
I think at that
again,
time.
well, but did you see in those pictures, like they look fairly well put together? So I don't
But
know.
I don't
maybe
think
that falls apart.
people bathe very often anyway back then, even in cities.
But if we think about depression, that's the thing. Like maybe you let your hygiene go more than usual, something like that.
Yeah, so instead of bathing once a month, you go 2.
Yeah, maybe. So it's said too that
It sounds
with
judgy, though.
withdrawal from social interactions, I'm like, what ones? Men also showed signs of depression, often being violence. It was not really, I don't know, it's not very unique from other types of depression other than how it was expressed, which I think something about that like prairie oppressive feeling of isolation, something about being
You're isolated, but yet it's so vast.
Yeah, so like
I think you would feel very small.
So it's doing something
which
big.
is terrifying.
It's doing something big is
Yeah,
very
it's like,
expressive.
see me.
Yes. It's very interesting.
I'm here. I get a lot of anxiety when I go to Montana.
My mom had
Big
a panic
sky
attack.
country.
Yeah, my mom had a panic attack in Hawaii. She's like, there's like nothing around, and she would just like, it took 3 days for her to stop, just calm down.
No, I don't know how I do on an island. I just don't know.
Just don't know.
I like to stay home. I like my house. I don't have this big need to travel. Give me in a lounge chair in the backyard, good book. I'm happy. I don't need to go anywhere.
And I do want to say that Prairie Madness overall does not lead to suicide. Like statistically, from what we know, it is depicted more in fictional stories, but there is some record of it.
I've not seen it in any fictional stories.
Dude, there's a lot. So in fiction, it's used. So the madness is depicted in Oh Pioneers and My and Tanya.
Things I've never heard of nor seen.
Heard of these things either. The Wind, The Homesman, Giants of the Earth, the 1927 Chronicles. I've never heard of any of these. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about these frequent depictions in fiction that you refer to.
I don't know. I don't know any of them. So, okay. So then the decline of Prairie Madness, it basically went away in the 20th century when things like communication, transport became easier, more people. There was like the closing of the frontier described by kind of like more people coming in.
The Pony Express.
Yes. So that level of isolation reduced. Okay. So interesting, right?
So interesting.
Okay.
I think it's all built on like high expectations that are just fucking dashed.
Okay, but I have another level.
Oh, let's go.
Okay. So within this, as I'm searching for kind of like offshoots, things like that, I found an article that was really interesting.
It's really hot in here.
I'm dripping.
I may have to go get the ice packs for us to sit on.
Do you want to pause and do it now before I?
Do you want me to?
Sure.
Okay. You talk.
Okay, I'm gonna talk, but I can't like dive into this yet. I'm very hot.
Talk about
sweaty.
something. Talk about your cat.
Okay, Nugget fell into the fish tank yesterday, and she's cute, and she looked like a drowned rat, and she looked embarrassed. I thought she fell in the toilet because I didn't see her fall into the fish tank. It's a 75-gallon fish tank, by the way. So falling in there is a rather scary ordeal with very large fish. So she did survive. Oh my God, I'm so happy. I'm dripping to my arms. This is highly unusual.
I'm gonna sit on that.
I want to sit in mine, in my jeans.
Hear that crackle?
Oh my gosh. Ooh, this, I don't think I can do this and read at the same time. It's a little chill. Put it on my lap. Okay.
I like it.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Is the silence of the Great Plains to blame for Prairie Madness?
Oh, the silence.
We've talked about sound. Remember, you've had topics about sound having impact. So this is about silence, and this ties in the wind that is referenced by almost every piece I've read.
The wind is low tone, and it ties into the low tones that create anxiety and feelings of doom.
Get ready. So here's another picture if you want another like that poor lady. I don't know.
I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot of fun,
to
be honest.
I mean,
you know, they built a house, so that's cool. I couldn't do that.
Okay, so
I had to build a house myself.
It wouldn't go so
It'd
well.
be real small and real unstable.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Let me see where I can dive in. Okay, so in both fictional and nonfiction accounts of Prairie Madness, they talk about the wind. So it's been brought up throughout. One writing said that during winter, the silence of death rests on the vast landscape. And a character in Manitoba settler Nellie McClung's story said, "The neutral fuse writes a poem about the droning soundtrack of the plains. I hate the wind with its evil spite, and it hates me with a hate as deep and hisses and jeers when I try to sleep." Ominous.
It's interesting. There's such a negative relationship to the wind.
Isn't it?
Just to take it back to like speaking of Native Americans, you know, there's a belief that I've read about that the wind is spirits.
Well, yeah.
And so there's a
like
positive relationship to the wind.
Calming. Like, I don't view wind as like a negative thing. So, okay. So
it does rattle me.
So
it makes wind makes me irritable.
Ratable.
Okay, now
that's a little chilly. Okay, so in a paper by Velez published in Historical Archaeology suggests this eerie soundscape, the silence comboed with the howling wind, could have contributed to mental illness in settlers.
Yes.
So it's not much of a leap. I mean, we have so much research out now that talks about how what we hear impacts how we sleep or don't sleep, stress, mental health problems, even cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes.
Impacting our nervous system.
Yes.
Even at a subconscious level.
So Velez, this researcher, wanted to understand if there's anything special about the soundscape of the prairie.
What does it sound like?
So he can't go back in time, obviously, but he did go and gather recordings of the plains.
Obviously.
Oh, okay, fine. Sort of obviously. So he got recordings from Nebraska and Kansas, which captured noises like the wind and the rain, and then got recordings of urban areas from like Barcelona, Mexico City, with weather sounds as well, and pedestrians. He ran the recordings into a program that created a visual representative of the spectrum of sound frequencies.
Interesting.
And compared each other kind of in a mapping of what the sound frequencies would be for the human ear. Like, what could the human ear pick up? What would it sound like? So he found that while all the landscapes contained plenty of sounds that humans would naturally be able to hear, the sounds of the cities were more diverse, spreading across more ranges of human hearing, and it came together more like a white noise. But on the prairie, little to none. No white noise background at all. What sounds there were coincided with a particularly sensitive part of human hearing range that the brain notices very readily. So it doesn't go into white noise category in our brain, it goes into alert, which may explain kind of the panic and dread and fear, and I don't like that, versus, soothing. Okay, so
yeah, I don't think the silence of being out there
would be soothing.
Soothing.
So the way I can describe it is it's very quiet until suddenly the noise that you do hear, you can't hear anything but that. So one can imagine a newly arrived settler used to the sounds of more urban, small town, white, noisy, everything at this point now, from a chicken clucking to a frog croaking to a drip of water, becomes dreadfully distinct and aggravating, like the
Sounds
drop
like
of a pin.
torture.
Yes. So a separate research study, a brain scientist at the University of Washington, Adrian Casey Lee, said, he wasn't involved in this study, but it's just kind of a similar one, said that the Great Plains soundscape is reminiscent of being in an echoic chamber. So it's a room designed to stop echoes.
Mhm.
So you're going in there and there's literally no reverberation back.
Oh, I've been in a music room like that, and I did not like it, and I had to get right out.
So that's what it's like. And I think
where your
that's
voice goes nowhere.
Yes.
It's uncomfortable.
Yes. And I didn't fully understand it until I read this article where it made sense to me in that way of, oh yeah, no, I don't like that either. It's kind of like when you put on noise canceling headphones, I have to have one ear off. I have to be able to hear my own voice.
You need to hear it. Yeah.
So now it's starting to make sense to me. Like, yeah, that would drive me crazy. And keep in mind too, that this deprivation that they're experiencing in their senses, even the smallest sound, rustle of clothes, your own heartbeat.
You'd be hyper aware of every little thing.
You couldn't ignore it. So he pointed out the human brain will naturally adapt to this environment, essentially turning up or turning down the volume to better distinguish what's going on. But it's that transition point that is probably why it eventually went away.
Well, you get used to your own sounds too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to all these sounds. So when I sleep somewhere else, there's new sounds that keep me up at night, and I just need my own sounds, like the train. People that don't live right next to a train, they come here and they're like, how do you stay on that? And I'm like, what? Like, I don't even notice it.
And then when everything is absolute nothing noise, and all of a sudden there's, a train, it's different. So he said that it's about being adaptive for survival. And if you adapt to a very low sound environment and all of a sudden there's a loud sound coming in, of course, your brain's going to be alerted to that.
Freak you out.
Yeah. So a research historian, Jacob Friedfield, a research historian at the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library, he wrote.
I thought Abe was a part of this research study. I was excited.
He wrote extensively on the Homestead Act. He says he's not come across the phenomenon of Prairie Madness in his own work, but notes that modern recordings used may have missed some sounds as well that could have impacted them, such as the howl of wolves across that nothingness, the rumblings of herds of bison.
Right. Low tones, there's been a lot of studies that those are felt as threatening and ominous and give you a sense of dis-ease.
Yes. And they said, so most of these people lived in sod houses or dugouts that are
What does sod houses mean?
Out of dirt.
It's just made a house made out of dirt.
Or like dug into the dirt and then covered over the top with like wood, but like into the ground. So they were saying too, like even hearing insects crawling in your walls, sort of stuff.
No, thank you.
Nope. So this study.
Oh, is that a sod house?
Yeah, right there. Yeah. So that would be a good example. Kind of a dugout too, because it looks like it's partially underground, maybe.
I mean, just
first house in Nebraska, 1880, built from
the
Nebraska brick.
Is impressive.
Still in a suit as well, I'd like to say.
I mean, I just think that's cool. Like, work with what you have.
So there's a lot of inconsistencies about records, gender roles at the time, prejudice against certain groups. There's a lot of things that could have impacted a lot of.
But can you imagine coming from a city
and then going to that,
and now you're living
in a dirt clod,
in a dirt hill?
No, no, I can't. So it makes sense why some of these things may happen.
Like if that's not what you're expecting. I think expectations come into play in this,
and then
in a big way.
Top on, okay, then the husband goes for days, your children are dying, and you don't get ceremony around them dying. They're just dead and you're burying your own kid in your yard. freezing crops, monetary ruin, not making enough money, trying to meet deadlines. This is high stress. So we can't really prove anything for any of this, but the silence and the hateful wind may have affected the settlers' minds.
Do you have that Disturbed song going through your mind?
I don't.
Oh,
What
I
song?
do.
What
The
song?
Sound of Silence.
Oh, no, I do.
I do.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I thought we should both have that.
Thanks.
That is so
Thank you.
interesting. Now, when I watch
know.
shows about the prairie, I'm going to see if they reference
Prairie Madness or Prairie Fever.
Prairie Fever.
Mhm.
This ice pack is working. I
know.
actually am not sweating anymore.
Yeah, no, it did stop my head from sweating.
Yeah.
It's cool.
You have to keep rotating it though.
I
or
know, I had it
else
on my lap.
It makes you numb.
The good thing about having a nice up here is that it's just a shelf.
I'm just going to put it on my head.
Well, it's your turn now.
Cool my brains. Okay. Here is my lead in. Oh, that's not it. Never mind.
What?
Okay, this is my lead in. You know this song, right?
Yeah. Ring of fire.
It's a burning thing, and it makes a fiery ring.
Okay, that's 19 seconds. Better stop. I'm going to talk to you not about that.
Okay.
What do you think I'm going to talk to you about?
I don't. Tapeworms?
What? Tapeworms?
Ring of fire. I don't know.
No, I'm going to talk to you about the ring of fire that we live on.
Oh.
Ready?
Yes.
The ring of fire.
I like that you had a musical intro to coincide.
I know, because
I should have
I love Johnny Cash.
played some howling winds
Or some howling
sounds
wolves.
of silence.
Yes, you should have played some Disturbed. Oh my God.
And I literally chose this talk, I think maybe too, because I'm going to Iowa in 2 days.
Is that the prairie?
Yeah, my friend that lives out there, she had to move there for a job. It is prairie.
Do you
And
still
it is
hear the wind?
There was such a strong windstorm in the middle of the night while I was there that I felt it shaking the house and it scared me. I did not like it.
You should go outside on the
No.
prairie
They have tornadoes too.
and listen to the wind and see if you feel that feeling of doom and gloom.
It's interesting because she does take on this, I have chickens, I'm doing all these prairie homesteady things, but then on occasion that depression straight up comes out of I am isolated in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
It's not my lifestyle. That's okay.
No.
The Ring of Fire is a path along the Pacific Ocean characterized by active volcanoes and frequent earthquakes.
Mm.
It's about 25,000 miles long. So it goes all around the Pacific Ocean. So it goes along the western part of our state, Washington.
Learning about this in history class.
Goes up, comes down, and then so it's sort of a horseshoe shape of active volcanoes, but if you include inactive volcanoes, it does make a ring. 75% of the Earth's volcanoes, 452 volcanoes, are located along the Ring of Fire.
Dang.
Some call it the Ring of Disaster. 90% of the Earth's earthquakes occur along the Ring of Fire, including the planet's most violent and dramatic seismic events. The reason we have all these volcanoes and earthquakes along the Ring of Fire is because the amount of movement of tectonic plates in the area. So tectonic plates, I was surprised that this was just sort of discovered in the 1960s.
I was gonna say, I remember learning about it.
Before that, they weren't really sure what makes a volcano, what causes earthquakes.
Shifting of things.
So then they discovered, it's tectonic plates. So along much of this Ring of Fire, so imagine all around the Pacific Ocean, that the plates overlap at convergent boundaries called subduction zones. So often there's a plate that is heavier that gets pushed down or subducted by the plate above. And then as the rock is subducted and goes down, it melts and becomes magma.
Why did you say that like a horse though?
Because my name is Naomi. Nay. The abundance of magma so near to Earth's surface gives
I'm not
rise
okay with any of what just happened.
to conditions. Just eat your huckleberries.
I'm eating them. They're delicious.
And this makes volcanic activity. A significant exception is the border between the Pacific and North American plates. So here, instead of just being subduction zones where the one plate goes under the other, here the plates move sideways like this. And so this is why there's so many earthquakes. San Andreas Fault, that's what's going on along there, where it's like pressure builds up and then it just jumps and there's a major earthquake that happens. So future topic, I want to talk about the biggest earthquake that happened that I went through in 1989, the Loma Prieta quake. So what's a volcano?
Tell me,
It's an opening in the surface of a planet.
have you been to a volcano?
Yeah, I've been to Mount St Helens.
I've been to 3.
I'll share about it.
Ooh, good.
I've been to some smaller ones, but that was like I camped on it. That was like an experience.
Ooh.
So this opening allows hot material to escape from an area of magma storage below the surface. This is called a magma chamber. So the magma is down there, and then the volcano is an opening that allows the magma to escape. And when it erupts, or where it erupts from, that is a volcanic vent. So when the magma breaches the surface of the Earth's crust, the volcano erupts, and the erupted magma is referred to as lava. Hot lava. Did you ever play that back in school?
Heck yeah.
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 Where it's like, oh, that's all hot lava. You can't step there, and you have to like jump around, and it's all awkward.
I mean, you don't say hot lava, you just say lava, but
Well, and then it's like if somebody falls into the lava, I felt like the consequences weren't realistic enough. Like their legs should have been completely charred at that point.
there's also a really stupid Netflix show called Don't Fall in the Lava. That is a remake of that, basically. Where
Oh.
they fall in like a fake lava.
See, I don't want fake lava.
It's made to look hot, but you know it's not hot.
I want real experiences.
We want real consequences.
That's right.
Ow, ow.
Or people don't learn.
People don't learn to not go on game shows like alone in the wilderness or to get eaten by bears.
So over time, the erupted material pile up to form the tall, broad slopes of what we think of our mind as a volcano. So that classic volcano shape. So it comes up and then it just like keeps building up. The magma or lava is itself a combination of molten rock, crystals, and gases. And it is this composition that influences the style of eruption and type of volcano. Eruptions can be explosive, sending hot mixtures of ash, gas, and rock high into the sky, or they can be calmer and spurt out steam or send minor amounts of lava down the slope. So this magma is formed in the mantle of our planet, the Earth. And this is the layer of the Earth just below the crust. So our Earth has 3 main layers.
I don't know
We
if you're
have-
allowed to teach this anymore.
The magma or the mantle is made up of solid rock that is very hot and it moves very slowly. The rock in the mantle cycles up and down in a circular motion called convection. And this is similar to the way a pot of boiling water heats up on your stove. So it's cycling up and down. And this process also regularly occurs in the Earth's atmospheres and oceans. So the Earth is like an egg. The egg white inside is like the mantle, and the egg yolk is the core.
Obviously, the middle is the best, though.
What, the egg
Yolk.
white?
The yolk.
No, that's the core. That's the very inside.
I said the middle is the best, too.
Oh, okay.
Core.
Do you ever just eat egg whites, or do you need
No.
that yellow in there?
No, I'll avoid the egg whites. And if it's gooey, it's all over now.
Well, you can make yellow rice. It's just made with yolk and you mix it with your rice and it's real good.
I like that. I'll eat egg white bites because they mostly taste like cheese.
I don't know if I would say that egg white has any flavors for me. I think there's flavors in the yolk. So we have the shell of the egg, like the Earth's crust, which is broken into pieces like a jigsaw
Thin.
puzzle.
Mhm.
And these pieces of crust, along with a small portion of the mantle below them, are relatively rigid and brittle. And these are referred to as the tectonic plates. So they're moving around on top. The tectonic plates float on the hot mantle beneath. So kind of cool. Like we think of the Earth as being very stable and solid, but it's all moving all the time. Kind of nuts.
Kind of scary, kind of ominous. We both had nature topics.
Nature. Well, I was in nature today too. We're
Oh.
eating nature.
Nature is ominous.
Nature's fucking scary. I mean, one of the things that keeps me up at night is the ring of
Nature.
fire.
Oh, I was like, it's nature.
Well, space, volcanoes, earthquakes, it all
Homeless
keeps me up at
poops
night.
in your walkway.
Once the mantle rock melts, the magma has to move through the mantle and through the crust to erupt at a volcano. So there's 3 different ways the magma can come up to the surface. Through the subduction zone. So talk about the plates come together, one's pushed up under another. And so in this area, there's high temperature, lots of pressures, and the magma is created, and then the magma can rise to the surface and form a volcano. So most of our volcanoes in Washington were built like this, in that way, through subduction zones. There's also mid-ocean ridges. This is when tectonic plates move in opposite directions away from each other, and an opening forms in between where the divergent plate boundaries are.
Ooh, could this be related? I saw a random thing that like the bottom of someone's swimming pool, I forget where this was, like a sinkhole opened and like people got sucked into the sinkhole under the swimming pool.
Well, I don't think that has anything to do with this, but that's really interesting.
Well, could that be plate shifting or something? Like if it was fine before? I don't know. Sinkholes are a whole different topic.
Sinkholes are a whole different thing. I
Okay.
think that's more to this closer to the surface than
Okay.
a mid-ocean ridge.
Fair.
There's also hot spots. This is the 3rd way that volcanoes can form. So this is inside the Earth, a hotspot. Scientists are still trying to figure out why hotspots happen. But the basic idea is that a portion of molten lava magma rises and pushes its way through the middle of a tectonic plate to reach the surface. So Yellowstone and the Hawaiian Islands are 2 famous examples of hotspot volcanoes. Are all volcanoes alike? Nope. Nope, they're not. So we have that like cone-shaped image, like the classic volcano image, but they have other types. And we can find many different types here in our state, in Washington. So the shape, size, and lifespan of a volcano, it depends on its location. So is it under the ocean? Is it a hot spot? What's going on? What's the chemistry and composition of the magma that erupts from it? And in particular, the amount of water and other gases and the amount of silicon dioxide greatly influence the type of magma and the type of eruption. So generally magmas that have more silica will be stickier, like thicker, more viscous, and they're going to do that like slow lava flow.
That was like one in Hawaii.
And those are going to erupt explosively.
Mm-hmm.
And magma is also influenced by its location. Magmas that push through continental versus oceanic crust will mix in with different types of rocks on their journey to the surface. So it really depends whether the volcano erupts explosively or non-explosively, depending on the chemistry of the magma. And the style of eruption also affects the overall shape of the volcano. There's also lots of different type of lava. I never knew there's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4 different types of lava. and basalt, andesite, dacite, and rhyolite. And they are vary in how hot they are. So basalt, like 1250 degrees Celsius. How hot is that in Fahrenheit? Will you look it up? Because I want to know how hot that is.
Say
That's
again? What am I looking?
1250 degrees Celsius.
1250, I mean like 1200.
1250, yeah. So that's like the hottest one.
Celsius in Fahrenheit, is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah, what is 1250 Celsius in Fahrenheit? Basalt is a very primitive magma. It's produced by the melting of rock in the mantle. So that's like the hottest and oldest one. Does it say how much Fahrenheit?
I'm struggling to get the internet.
Oh my God. We'll come back to that. It's hot.
I'm not getting
You
it.
don't want to touch the lava. It's hot lava.
Oh, I almost died because of that.
So what's 1250 degrees Celsius?
I can't. Your internet
can't.
hates me. I can't.
Okay.
I just can't.
Well, people that didn't have US schooling know exactly what we're talking about.
We don't because we're here. Sorry.
So there's different types of lava, 4 types. I didn't know that. It varies in color, it varies in temperature, but I mean, they're all hot. None of them you're going to want to jump into and swim around in. So Washington, our state where we live, has 5 volcanoes that are listed as high or very high threat potential.
Mhm.
Mount Baker,
Mhm.
Glacier Peak, Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, and Mount Adams. These volcanoes are all part of the Cascade Ridge, which is a 1,200-mile line of volcanoes that goes from British Columbia to Northern California. Many volcanoes in Washington are active and have had recent eruptions. Volcanoes do not erupt at regular intervals, so it's difficult to know when or where the next eruption will happen. So it's very unpredictable.
Mhm.
So we need to be prepared.
And they do a lot of like readings and stuff, but that doesn't make me feel good because when Spokane had that last what was it for? The little mini tornadoes that dropped down, like
Nobody knew that was coming.
well, they saw them on the readings and they just thought they weren't a big deal, even though it
Oh.
like flipped people's trailers. But so
and
like
boats, yeah.
I'm more worried about people telling me than I am about like I'm sure someone somewhere will see it. It's just will I be told in time that I'm worried about.
We need an in at the US Geological Survey so they can text us first.
Yes. How do we
Trust
do
no
that?
one, question everything. I don't know. If you work for the USGS, DM us.
We'll give you a tote bag.
Totes.
We go.
Many hazards come with living near volcanoes. Volcanic eruptions can send ash and volcanic debris into the air. Heat from volcano can melt snow and ice and cause dangerous mud flows or debris flows called lahars. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but LAHARS. I'm going to call it lahars. It's very dangerous. That's when everything's like caught up in this big flow. It's like taking everything with it.
Oh, almost like a mudslide, but lava and stuff.
Stuff, yeah. Molten rock can erupt and flow downhill, destroying everything in its path. Like it just incinerates everything. It just burns it all up. Volcanoes are also beautiful mountains that people
Mhm.
can visit each year for recreation. Volcanoes are the most visual result of plate tectonics and are one of the few places on Earth where molten rock can reach the surface. There are even old volcanoes on other planets such as Venus and Mars. Who knew?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Slight connection.
What?
At the end of my
Are there
research.
volcanoes in the prairie?
No, but what I read was that like so
No, there aren't
the-
because it's a prairie.
the density of air also impacts how sound hits you. So if you were on
Mm.
Mars, that prairie impact would be very similar to that. So
Interesting.
on Mars, would we have another, like if we colonize Mars, would we have another Prairie Madness full of volcanoes?
Well, I think if we colonize
Yes.
Mars, especially if it goes along with anything like that Mars One plan, there's going to be a lot of Mars madness.
A lot of Mars Madness.
Yeah, there's going to be murder. There's going to be violence,
Giant shows of
drama,
suicide.
a lot of drama.
Mhm. Yep.
Who's at risk of volcanoes? Well, I focus my research on our state because I'm just looking out for number one.
We know.
Residents throughout the state of Washington are at risk of volcanic hazards. That's us.
Look into your own state's guidelines for what you need in your go bag.
There are active volcanoes in Washington and the rest of the Pacific Northwest. These volcanoes tend to erupt explosively and can cause significant damage both near and far. High speed flows of hot ash and rock, lava flows, and landslides can destroy homes and infrastructure within 10 miles of the eruption. Enormous mud flows of ash, debris, and melted ice, the lahars, can devastate low-lying areas more than 50 miles away. And when Mount St. Helens erupted, the ash went all the way to California. Like even on this side of the state, it coated everything and kids had to miss school.
2 of the mountains I went to exploded the year after I went there. One was the Kona Island volcano, and the other one was in when I went to it was in Italy. One of theirs things. I don't know.
So a big one in recent times, 2018, I can't remember the name of the volcano, but Papua New Guinea, they had to evacuate everybody. And it continued to go off for more than a month. And I think as of last year, it was still doing business.
I have to say one that was really interesting when I went to Santorini, one of the Greek islands, because it's an island and like the town is built on like the edge of what was an old volcano. So in the center where all the water is, that was where the volcano had erupted at one point, and then it got filled by the Mediterranean Sea. So it's like the town is built on the outskirts of that, which is so interesting and scary when you think about it.
Yeah. So just remember 75% of the world's volcanoes are in a ring of fire.
Here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
great.
we are in the shit.
So I basically was like, the prairie sucks, and you were like, yeah, but here sucks too. So fair. Everywhere sucks for a reason.
I mean, what I've liked,
we love our Pacific Northwest
about
get
being in the Inland Empire, whatever they call our area is, no, but we're like inland.
Oh.
So don't have quite the risk of earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunami. We're several hundred miles away.
A little bit.
And then not supposed to have like the tornado risk. We don't have hurricane risk. So that gave me some peace. I mean, after growing up in California and being completely traumatized by the Loma Prieta quake, I've liked that. Do I feel safe? No.
I mean, the fires are now like my new fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, how does this affect me?
Again.
So there's an amazing website for Washingtonians, and you can actually look at maps. I'm going to show you one of each of our 5 active volcanoes, and it shows you if you're in harm's way. So
in the zone.
So here's for Glacier Peak. If this goes off, it shows actually where the lava is going to flow.
Oh, handy.
And I'm like, oh, cool, it goes west. I'm good.
We're good.
Because we're east, but look at that. Like it shows exactly the rivers it's going to flow, and as it goes towards the sea.
I mean, kudos to those topography experts. Look at you. Maps. Okay.
Yeah, but it's cool.
Yes.
So this area around the mountain, like you definitely don't want to be there. That's going to be heavily impacted. That's where there's going to be a lot of lava flows, a lot of the lahars, ballistic ejects, and rock falls. You want to be clear of the mountain area, but if you live there, you might not have a lot of time. You don't have a lot of time to evacuate. You may be stubborn and
roads get clogged or roads get blocked.
That's right.
Stuff. So I mean, be prepared.
Yeah. So anybody living around there, and this website is really cool. Like it gives you evacuation routes. It gives you preparedness information, like what specifically you need to have prepared on hand. You can sign up to get alerts. you can do everything. So I would say anybody that lives near any of our 5 volcanoes, sign up on that
do
website.
it.
It's really cool.
If you live in the prairies, I have nothing to help you. I'm sorry.
Mount Adams, I looked up too. So this one goes more south
Yeah.
and slightly
little.
southeast, but nothing is coming east.
Yeah.
So
But
Mount Adams,
smoke and ash, you could imagine.
yeah. So I mean, but Hood River, I've gone there for lunch lots of times. Like
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
getting the flows
Mhm.
going to Hood River.
So like 2 hours away, something like that. I don't know. I don't know.
3.5.
3.5 way off. Okay.
So you get the area around the mountain, the most impacted. You get, the big, you're in the shit, but then the lava flows with all the stuff. Like it's not just lava, it's trees, it's all kinds of stuff, houses, unfortunately, all flowing down. And along with this ring of fire volcanic danger, there's risk of tsunamis, earthquakes we talked about, and dangerous gases.
Mm-hmm.
By far the most abundant volcanic gas is water vapor, which is harmless, but significant amounts of carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and hydrogen halides can also be emitted from volcanoes. And depending on their concentrations, these could be potentially hazardous to people, animals, agriculture, and properties. So Mount St. Helens, I didn't live here yet, but I've heard a lot of tales.
I've heard of tales as well.
So I was 10, my ex-husband was 10, he lived on this side of the state, and he told me that
My dad lived through this.
Everything got coated with ash and he didn't have to go to school. And he said the wheat crops, because he grew up in a wheat farm, the next year were the best fucking wheat crops ever.
Can I call my dad real quick and see what he experienced? when this
Yeah, let's
happened?
hear it.
Let's see if he answers this phone.
So while you're dialing, I'll give a little history.
Okay.
On March 27th, 1980, a series of volcanic explosions and pyroclastic flows began at Mount St. Helens. A series of phreatic blasts.
Hello?
Is he there?
No, it was weird. He wasn't there. Keep going.
So these blasts occurred from the summit and escalated until a major eruption took place on May 18th. So there was stuff happening for a couple months. So on the morning.
Hello?
You called me?
I did.
You're on the podcast.
You're on the podcast before you say something insulting to me. Just kidding. Hello.
Can I help you?
Tell us, we're talking about the Ring of Fire and we've moved on to Mount St. Helens. Can you tell us about your personal experience of when Mount St. Helens exploded in 1980?
Oh, I was on top of the mountain that day.
A liar.
And windy. No, I was in Snohomish, north of Seattle. Saw the news, and it didn't affect Western Washington because the wind was usually, as usual, was going toward the northeast. But was going hunting in Eastern Washington the next week and drove over there, and it looked like in places like Moses Lake area, like there was 2 feet of snow in places where they had to plow the roads through towns and had berms of ash and cars all over that had been toasted the engine from all the sand or the fine grit from the ash had ruined their cars, motors. But I mean, it never.
You
attacked.
weren't attacked personally by the
I
volcano.
was not attacked personally.
No, that's good.
I,
that was helpful.
okay.
Are you worried about the next volcanic explosion in our state?
Am I, or was I?
Are you now currently concerned about the threat of the next volcanic explosion, the imminent threat?
No. At the moment, I say let her rip.
Well, thank you, Father, so much. I will talk to you later.
Okay. Well, and that would probably be Rainier or Baker, but
Oh, we just looked at the Mount Baker lava flow map prediction.
Luckily, it's not coming east.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, because either way, it's either central and eastern Washington,
Yeah, they're all fucked.
or Canada. So there you go.
Sorry to say, all y'all.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
That's what I heard, that it was like snow everywhere.
Yeah.
But it's May. So
Yeah. Weird.
yeah. So this eruption is considered the most disastrous volcanic eruption in US history. And it was dormant from the 1840s or 50s until 1980s. So, I think we get very complacent. And I think it just is like a mountain and you don't really think about it. But when you're living in those areas and when you're driving by those volcanoes, you need to remember this is an active volcano. It's not going to give us a big warning. Like, it could go off at any moment.
Well, when you go to like Kona Island in Hawaii, you just see lava fields everywhere. So it's like in your face that this happens. And it was interesting because they used to do like where you could walk near the edge or whatever. And when I went there, we had to go like way back because it was supposedly very active and you could see it bubbling and stuff. And then it exploded that next year.
Yeah.
Oh, it's scary. I was worried while I was there. It's like, how do they make that time? How do they know what nature's going to do?
Well, they don't.
They don't.
I mean, they make the best predictions based on history and looking at patterns, but you don't know for sure.
No.
I went camping on Mount St. Helens when I very first came up to this area. So it was only about 10 years after the explosion. And it was creepy AF. I felt like the ground was hollow. Like, I didn't sleep the whole night. It just didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And at that time, things were still growing back. I mean, even 10 years later, now nature has returned pretty much, but there was still like sparse areas and you could just see like the scarring of the land, and it just felt too quiet and I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah.
So there was a gradual buildup to Mount St. Helens. There were earthquake swarms. There ended up being 174 foreshocks of magnitude 2.6 or greater in the last 2 days before it exploded. But 57 people were killed when Mount St. Helens exploded. I forgot that.
Yeah, I remember like hearing a story about like there was one like man that lived on Mount St. Helens and he specifically like refused to leave.
No, he's the classic guy that's in the documentary.
Yeah.
He's like,
I don't even know if that's true or not. Maybe
no, it's true.
It is true. Okay.
Yeah, he refused to leave and he passed away.
Yeah.
But
I just remember that was kind of like told to me growing up as like the classic, like you may think that you know better, but you don't.
But respecting autonomy, like that's his land.
And he knew that it was going to happen.
I'm glad. I feel like now they would like forcibly remove him, but I feel like that's his choice. Like that's his domain. Let him do what he wants to do. He's an old guy.
Yeah, and I'm sure they had plenty of people they were trying who willingly wanted to evacuate. So he probably, putting other people at risk to try to save him when he's doesn't want to.
No, let him do what he wants to do. Yeah, we watched that documentary in my geology class in college, which weirdly, I was 2 weeks into my geology class in college when I was in the 1989 Loma Prieta quake.
Too close to rocks.
And we were learning about earthquakes. I shit you not. When we came back, we were like to the professor, like, did you cause this? Like, it's a homework assignment? Was this like a serious field work experiment?
That's what I should say if I'm like downtown and then someone who has a mental health condition of some kind is harassing me. I'd be like, teacher, did you send him after me?
So you can work on your skills, right?
That actually happened while I was working when you were my supervisor.
So, was that when I got jumped?
It was around that time period,
Oh, okay.
but I was just downtown. It was when I walked to the burrito shop with the receptionist folks.
Got it.
Yeah.
So I forgot that 57 people were killed. So even with warning, like, okay, something's happening, you should evacuate. Still, like, this shows how it's unpredictable. So an innkeeper was killed, a World War I vet was killed, 2 photographers were killed, and a geologist was killed. Hundreds of square miles were reduced to wasteland and caused over $1 billion in damage for that time, which is like obviously more now. Thousands of animals were killed, and Mount St. Helens was left with a crater on its north side. So it blew out like to the side. So it's sort of like has like a flat area on the side. And at the time of the eruption, the top of the volcano was owned by Burlington Northern Railroad, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. So after this, they donated the land to the U.S. Forest Service. They're probably like, you can have it.
Yeah,
we don't really need it now.
It's broken.
Yeah, it's broken. Here you go.
They're probably like, I don't want that to happen again, and own it.
Right.
Liability issues.
So I drive to California all the time, and we go on Highway 97 through the center of Oregon, and we go by Crater Lake, which is a huge lake. And this lake in Oregon was created when Mount Mazuma blew. So the explosion like blew all the mountain volcano material out, and all that was left was this hole. And this force was 50 times as big as Mount St. Helens in 1980. Dang. So this could happen. I mean, we would be impacted on our state if there was an eruption of that force where the whole mountain was just gone and it's a crater. I mean, the devastation it's crazy. So the U.S. Geological Survey, they monitor temperature changes, they monitor earthquakes, they monitor gas bursts, which is like when your volcano is farting, I think. And so they compare these signs, these stats with like the historical record. And if something seems off, if something seems to be increasing, they'll start to look at it, but it's not an exact science. And earthquakes absolutely cannot be predicted. That's part of why I'm so terrified of them after my traumatic experience, is you just don't know. Like you're in it and you can't escape. There's nothing you can do. So they try to monitor this so that if something they think is going to happen, they can have people evacuate, but it's not an exact science. So if you want to know more, I really encourage you to look at the Washington State Department of Natural Resources website. It is super rad, and it has all those maps of like where the lava is going to flow, and you can see like if you live in those areas, and it also lets you sign up for alerts, and you can learn like how to be prepared.
Are you okay?
Is important.
Are you okay?
I'm never okay.
Talking about the earthquakes, you seemed a little not okay.
No, I'm way better. I'm gonna maybe I'll do that for my next topic. I 100% had like diagnosable PTSD from my earthquake experience. So maybe I'll go into like the San Andreas fault and then talk about the 1990 quake.
Or maybe she won't, because sometimes that happens too. And that's okay. Whatever you want to do.
Maybe I won't be in the mood next week.
Maybe not. Maybe sometimes a howling wind comes by and grasps your attention.
That's right. If you haven't listened to our last podcast, we talked about, this is always a big memory test.
Okay, hold on.
For us. What did we talk about? What did I talk about? I honestly can't remember either.
Okay, hold on. It was only a week ago.
We can
I talked about I talked about.
You had a serial killer.
Yes.
Pedro Lopez.
Pedro Lopez.
Monster of the Andes.
Yes.
Now, what did I talk about? I helped you. Help me.
You went first, and you talked about. Oh, it was not about a person. It was about. Oh my gosh. Why?
So
Damn
rude.
it. Okay, I'm thinking.
Let me pull up my spreadsheet. While I'm pulling up the spreadsheet because we have absolutely zero short-term memory.
Oh my gosh, it's like right there. Something about.
You still don't know.
It's like right there. I see it.
What do you see?
I see it.
In the meantime, consider being
It's not
our
about harming-
Podbean patron.
It's not about harming.
It's only
animals.
$1.
Not harming animals. It's about.
Oh, why you
about
shouldn't
why you
keep
should-
wild animals.
Yes, thank you. See, my
Yes,
was there.
you
It
did
was
it.
Close.
Focusing on the horrible
Yes.
Travis the chimp, not shrimp.
Shrimp.
Travis
the
the-
horrible shrimp that ate the face off the lady.
Horrible incident of Travis the chimp that disfigured Charla Nash. Yes. But be our Podbean patron if you want to get to know us more personally. We're doing a pre-funk every episode, and so it's only $1.
Yeah.
Come on, people.
All
I mean,
right.
a Starbucks now is like $6.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you think we're just getting so many patrons that we don't need you, you're wrong.
You're wrong.
We can't buy the Starbucks yet.
No, we're hoping to at least make enough money that it pays for our Starbucks. We are not there
We're not there.
by far.
Well, until next time,
Pack your go bag.
and listen to the sounds of silence.